Imagine a world where one woman's story was so shocking, so defiant, that history itself tried to erase her. Picture a pregnant mother walking through streets cloaked in fear, her every step shadowed by secrets the powerful didn't want you to know. Her voice was silenced, her name almost forgotten, yet centuries later, fragments of her life clawed back from the margins of time. What she endured, and what she revealed, still chills the heart today. History is often told through the lens of the victors, their triumphs, and their legacies, while countless others fade into shadow. Among them was a pregnant woman whose story was deliberately erased, a life marked by courage, suffering, and an unwavering will to survive. To understand her, we must travel back to a time when societal norms were unforgiving, and the consequences of stepping outside them could be fatal. Her world was one of rigid hierarchies, where women, especially those who were pregnant, were expected to conform to roles dictated not by their desires, but by tradition, law, and the ever-watchful eyes of community and authority alike. Deviate, and the penalty was not just scandal, but persecution, exile, or worse. She lived in a bustling city where narrow cobbled streets hid both opportunity and danger. Markets overflowed with goods from far-off lands, but for women, even the wealth of a city could not shield them from scrutiny. Every rumor, every whispered accusation, carried weight. In this environment, her pregnancy became both a personal reality and a public statement, a visible mark that would draw attention from allies and enemies alike. Yet she was not a passive figure swept along by circumstance. She possessed a keen mind and a fierce determination to protect herself and her unborn child, even as forces far beyond her control sought to suppress her story. What makes her tale so compelling is not merely the hardships she faced, but the way history attempted to erase her very existence. Official records were conveniently incomplete. Letters, diaries, and legal documents that might have preserved her voice disappeared or were deliberately destroyed. Scholars long believed she was a footnote at best, a fleeting mention in court proceedings, or a blurred figure in town registries. And yet, traces of her life persisted, hidden in the margins of historical archives, waiting for the right eyes to uncover them. Modern historians now recognize her story as a crucial window into the struggles of women who were pregnant in eras that offered them little protection. By piecing together evidence from multiple sources, court records, personal letters, medical texts, and even folklore, they have reconstructed her life with astonishing clarity. Her experiences resonate today, reminding us that societal pressures, stigma, and the erasure of marginalized voices are not just problems of the past. They persist in subtle forms, urging us to listen carefully, question accepted narratives, and honor the stories that were nearly lost. Where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoy dark history stories like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your feedback in the comments. She was born into a world that measured a woman's worth by her obedience, her ability to bear children, and her silence. From the very beginning, whispers followed her like shadows. Her parents, modest merchants, had hoped for a life of stability for their daughter, but fate had other designs. As a child, she learned quickly that attention could be dangerous, that kindness could be weaponized, and that knowledge could be a double-edged sword. By the time she reached adulthood, she understood the unspoken rules of survival: never draw unnecessary notice, never trust too freely, and above all, guard your own body and choices. And then, the pregnancy came. It was unplanned, unwanted by the patriarchal society that saw her as property, yet deeply desired by no one except herself, for it was her child she carried with both fear and fierce hope. The father was absent, a figure who disappeared into rumor and speculation, leaving her to navigate the treacherous waters alone. Every step she took through crowded streets felt like a negotiation with fate itself. Merchants stared, neighbors whispered, and the authorities watched with the detached cruelty of those who enforce rules without mercy. Her body became a symbol, whether she wanted it or not, a vessel that carried not only life but the potential scandal that could engulf her family, ruin her reputation, and place her in mortal danger. At night, she lay awake, listening to the city's heartbeat through thin wooden walls, imagining the eyes of unseen watchers following her through every alley, every doorway. The historical context was merciless. Women who bore children outside sanctioned unions were often ostracized, punished, or subjected to brutal legal proceedings. And yet, despite knowing this, she refused to yield entirely to fate. She sought discreet allies, midwives who operated in the shadows of official medicine, scholars who preserved forbidden knowledge, and strangers who offered quiet solidarity. Each encounter was a calculated risk, a test of courage and trust. As her belly grew, so did the scrutiny. Letters she wrote to sympathetic friends were intercepted, diary entries mysteriously vanished, and the few confidants she trusted began to disappear under circumstances that made her pulse quicken with dread. The tension in the city was palpable, not just for her, but for all who lived in the tight grip of societal expectation. By the second trimester, she had learned to navigate the complex dance of avoidance and confrontation. She walked with purpose, spoke minimally, and hid a growing belly beneath layers of clothing that were both fashionable and concealing. But concealment was only partially effective. Gossip, that ancient and insidious force, began to swirl. The whispers grew louder, moving from street corners to courtrooms, until the very authorities who should have protected her became instruments of her oppression. In those early months, she also encountered the stark inequalities of medical practice. Doctors, trained in theory but cruel in application, offered treatments that were painful, often ineffective, and sometimes fatal, particularly for pregnant women. Yet she persisted, learning remedies from midwives, herbalists, and even ancient texts that had been banned by local authorities. Every day was a negotiation between hope and terror. Her internal life became a refuge, a secret diary of thoughts, fears, and dreams that she meticulously hid from prying eyes. She recorded her child's movements, her bodily changes, her fears of abandonment, and her quiet plans for survival. In these pages, modern historians later found evidence of a woman who was far ahead of her time in intelligence, resilience, and foresight. As the months passed, the city itself seemed to conspire against her. A neighbor's accusation, a sudden inspection by local officials, or a public confrontation could undo all her careful planning. And yet, even as danger mounted, she exhibited moments of extraordinary defiance, a sharp retort to a cruel official, a cleverly worded note that undermined a rival's attempt to expose her, a silent but resolute walk through the marketplace that seemed to declare, "I exist, I endure, and you cannot erase me." In these acts, she was both ordinary and extraordinary, a reflection of countless women whose stories were never recorded but whose courage shaped the course of their communities. Scholars note that her resilience was emblematic of a broader resistance among women of her era, a quiet rebellion against systemic forces that sought to control every aspect of their lives. Her story, once nearly lost, offers a rare glimpse into the daily calculations, the emotional landscapes, and the physical realities of pregnancy in a society that neither valued nor protected female autonomy. In modern parallels, we see echoes of her struggle. Women today still confront systemic pressures regarding their bodies, choices, and the narratives imposed upon them. Experts argue that recognizing such historical figures is not merely an act of correction, but a reminder of the enduring human capacity for courage in the face of oppression. By reconstructing her life from fragments, court records, personal letters, folklore, and medical notes, historians have uncovered a portrait of both fragility and ferocity, a woman navigating a world determined to minimize her existence. The suspense of her story lies not only in the danger she faced but in the uncertainty of survival, the precarious balance between visibility and invisibility, and the relentless social forces that sought to erase her. As the first signs of labor approached, every step, every interaction, carried the weight of possibility and peril, a tension that echoes in every era where power seeks to silence those who refuse to be silenced. She became an unintentional symbol, a pregnant woman whose body and life embodied defiance, courage, and the enduring human spirit. Through her experiences, we are reminded that history is not only the story of kings, generals, and conquerors, but also the quiet, persistent struggles of individuals who dared to exist on their own terms, and whose stories, when rediscovered, illuminate the darkness that once sought to engulf them. As her pregnancy advanced, the dangers she faced multiplied, shifting from whispered threats to tangible hazards that could no longer be ignored. The authorities, previously content with surveillance and rumors, began to escalate their scrutiny. Neighbors who had once offered sympathetic smiles now averted their eyes or reported minor infractions, each one exaggerated into a perceived moral failing. Even the midwives she trusted became reluctant, fearful of the legal consequences if they were found assisting a woman who defied societal norms. In response, she became increasingly strategic, learning to mask pain, to disguise her growing belly with layered clothing, and to create plausible reasons for every excursion. Her days became a choreography of caution, a public appearance here, a secret consultation there, each movement carefully calculated to avoid the omnipresent gaze of judgment. Yet, amid the fear, she cultivated resilience, using moments of solitude to prepare for what was to come. Diaries from the period, later analyzed by historians, reveal a mind sharpened by adversity, a woman who combined ingenuity with a deep understanding of human behavior to navigate a society that seemed poised to crush her. And then, one chilling day, the consequences of being visible arrived with brutal clarity. A neighbor, envious or fearful, reported an incident, one small, innocent moment twisted into evidence of impropriety. The officials, hungry for control and eager to assert their authority, seized upon this as justification to interrogate her in public spaces, questioning her morals, her fitness as a mother, and her adherence to societal law. The interrogation was not merely legal, it was psychological warfare, designed to erode her confidence and isolate her from allies. Her replies were careful, measured, but her heart raced with the knowledge that any misstep could result in imprisonment, physical punishment, or public shaming. Experts who have studied cases like Hayes emphasize that this was a deliberate tactic, part of a system designed to enforce compliance through fear, humiliation, and constant surveillance. Yet she refused to break. Her mind became a fortress, her will a shield. She found small moments of reprieve, a kind word from a sympathetic passerby, a note of encouragement smuggled through intermediaries, or the quiet reassurance of a child moving within her womb. Each moment was a victory, each gesture a reminder of life persisting despite oppression. As labor approached, tension reached an almost unbearable peak. The city's labyrinthine streets, once navigable with caution, now seemed like traps, every shadow a potential witness, every passerby a potential accuser. In her final weeks, she relied on hidden passages, secret stairways, and trusted contacts who risked everything to ensure she could move safely and discreetly. Historical reconstruction shows that she kept a small, coded journal during this time, noting hours, encounters, and her own fluctuating fear, demonstrating a foresight and courage that modern readers find astonishing. These records, pieced together from fragments, suggest that she anticipated attempts to erase her story even as she lived it, documenting details in ways that could survive the destruction of her primary records. Her experience during labor itself was fraught with peril. The nearest hospital was unwelcoming, staffed by those who would judge her rather than assist her, and midwives who could provide skilled care operated in secret, often at great personal risk. She labored in a concealed location, aided by those she trusted, navigating pain, fear, and uncertainty while acutely aware that any misstep could endanger both her life and that of her child. Modern experts point out that maternal mortality at the time was extraordinarily high, and her survival was far from guaranteed, making her endurance all the more remarkable. Once the child was born, her challenges did not cease. The legal system demanded documentation, witnesses, and approvals that were nearly impossible to secure without exposing herself to scrutiny and retaliation. Yet she maneuvered through these obstacles with astonishing ingenuity, employing aliases, coded communications, and the goodwill of those few allies willing to assist her in defiance of authority. Scholars today note that her ability to protect her child while preserving her own safety speaks to an intelligence, foresight, and moral courage that was rare for anyone, let alone a woman operating under such oppressive conditions. Over time, fragments of her story began to resurface, preserved in indirect ways. A court clerk's notation here, a letter slipped into private archives there, folklore that celebrated her courage even as official histories ignored it. Each piece of evidence revealed not just survival, but a conscious act of resistance. She was not merely enduring, she was defying erasure. Modern parallels are striking. Women in contemporary society still navigate systemic pressures, balancing personal safety, bodily autonomy, and societal judgment in ways that echo her historical experience. Experts studying these patterns highlight the persistence of structural oppression, showing how even centuries later, the human struggle for agency and recognition remains pressing. In this context, her story becomes more than a historical curiosity. It is a mirror reflecting ongoing challenges. It reminds us that courage is often quiet, that defiance can be subtle yet powerful, and that the preservation of one's story can itself be an act of revolution. By the end of these months, She had transformed from a figure of vulnerability into one of resilience, navigating each obstacle with a careful blend of intellect, courage, and intuition. Her eventual emergence into public life, albeit cautious, was a testament not just to personal survival, but to the enduring human drive to assert one's existence against forces that seek to suppress it. Every step she took, every decision she made, was laid with meaning, echoing across generations, providing insight into the lived experience of countless women whose voices were similarly endangered by history's selective memory. Her life, once nearly invisible, began to illuminate the hidden histories of her society, revealing the mechanisms of control, the subtle resistances, and the extraordinary courage of those who endured. Scholars continue to analyze her journey, drawing lessons about social structures, gender depression, and the power of documentation. In doing so, they not only restore her voice, but challenge us to recognize the narratives of those historically silenced, understanding that each reclaimed story adds depth, complexity, and humanity to our comprehension of the past. The suspense, the danger, and the courage she displayed remain profoundly instructive, demonstrating that even in moments of extreme vulnerability, agency, bravery, and strategic thinking can emerge, leaving an indelible mark on history that refuses to be erased even after the birth of a child. Her ordeal was far from over. The city that once watched her every move now seemed to tighten its grip, as if aware that the act of survival itself was an affront to authority. Her days were a delicate balance of concealment and cautious engagement, each action weighed for both immediate risk and long-term consequence. She moved through markets, churches, and narrow alleyways with an almost ritualistic awareness of who might be observing, what might be overheard, and how a single misstep could unravel the fragile safety she had built. The child became both a source of joy and a further marker of scrutiny, a living symbol of defiance against a society that sought to regulate not only her body but her very existence. Scholars note that her maternal vigilance was extraordinary, reflecting a deep understanding of risk, social dynamics, and the vulnerabilities imposed upon her by the era. Even simple tasks, fetching water, seeking medical advice, acquiring food, required intricate planning and, at times, the assistance of trusted intermediaries willing to flout rules to preserve his safety. Every interaction became a study in subtlety. A nod here, a veiled comment there, gestures meant to communicate knowledge and intent without provoking retaliation. Yet, despite her caution, dangers continued to emerge unpredictably. Rival families, envious peers, and morally rigid authorities monitored her movements, sometimes laying traps to expose her perceived transgressions. The constant surveillance created a state of heightened tension, a psychological pressure that historians describe as comparable to modern experiences of individuals navigating oppressive social or legal systems. She learned to anticipate these threats, to read the subtleties of human behavior, and to respond with measures that were both creative and cautious. Over time, she developed a network of allies who operated discreetly, providing resources, guidance, and protection. These relationships were painstakingly maintained, grounded in mutual trust, secrecy, and a shared understanding of the stakes involved. Through coded messages, hidden meetings, and discreet exchanges, she preserved her autonomy and ensured her child's safety, even as the city's authorities sought evidence to justify interference. Modern scholars draw parallels between her strategic navigation of social networks and contemporary methods of resistance employed by marginalized individuals under oppressive conditions. Each day presented new challenges: a sudden inspection of living quarters, the arrival of an inquisitive official, or the revelation of a previously unknown accuser. Her responses were measured but decisive, a combination of intellect, intuition, and courage. Historical analysis indicates that she maintained meticulous records during this period, documenting events in ways that could survive if discovered, ensuring that her story would not vanish entirely. These entries, rediscovered centuries later, reveal a sophisticated mind adept at balancing immediate needs with long-term preservation of life and narrative. Her story also demonstrates the intersection of personal resilience and societal critique. By surviving and maintaining her agency, she exposed the arbitrary cruelty and systemic pressures embedded within the structures surrounding her. As she moved through her days, she occasionally engaged with sympathetic intellectuals and medical practitioners, seeking knowledge that could aid her and her child, while remaining vigilant against those who might exploit or betray her trust. This delicate balancing act required extraordinary emotional fortitude, as each interaction carried potential risk and reward, sometimes blurring the lines between friend and foe. Experts examining her life highlight that her survival strategies, concealment, coded communication, strategic alliances, were not only personal tactics but acts of resistance, challenging the assumptions and authority of a society determined to control her fate. Over time, small victories accumulated, successful evasion of legal penalties, the preservation of health for herself and her child, and the quiet defiance of societal expectations. Each achievement reinforced her sense of agency and the legitimacy of her existence, serving as proof that survival need not be passive, and that resilience could manifest even in environments designed to suppress it. Her experiences also offer insight into the broader social fabric of her era. The mechanisms of gossip, moral policing, and institutional enforcement reveal a society that prized conformity and control, punishing deviation with relentless precision. Yet, within this oppressive environment, she carved a space for autonomy, demonstrating that even under intense scrutiny, strategic action and human ingenuity could create pockets of freedom. The suspense of her story lies in the constant tension between visibility and invisibility. She had to remain seen enough to navigate daily life and gain necessary support, yet invisible enough to avoid punitive scrutiny. Modern historians note that this duality, being both present and hidden, resonates with contemporary experiences of marginalized groups who navigate surveillance, systemic bias, and social judgment in ways that echo her historical circumstances. In the latest stages of her journey, the interplay between fear and courage became particularly acute. Each day required careful risk assessment, weighing potential exposure against the immediate necessities of survival. Scholars examining her records highlight the psychological toll of this constant vigilance, noting that her ability to maintain clarity, empathy, and strategic thinking under such stress is extraordinary. Even as her child grew, bringing moments of tenderness and hope, the shadow of societal threat never fully lifted. Each interaction, from a casual conversation to a formal legal proceeding, carried implications that could reverberate for months or years. Yet she persisted, guided by an unwavering commitment to life, survival, and the preservation of her story. Her eventual emergence from these relentless pressures was not a single moment of triumph, but a gradual cessation of autonomy, a quiet reclamation of presence and voice. By navigating the treacherous landscape with intelligence, caution, and courage, she demonstrated that survival under oppression is both possible and transformative. The fragments of her story that survived, diary entries, court notes, oral traditions, and rediscovered letters, reveal not only a life of extraordinary resilience but also a blueprint for understanding the lived experiences of countless women whose histories were similarly threatened by erasure. Modern commentators draw lessons from her life, the importance of preserving records, the necessity of strategic alliances, and the profound courage required to assert one's existence under systemic oppression. Her tale also challenges contemporary audiences to reflect on whose stories are recorded, whose are erased, and the mechanisms by which societies decide which voices are heard. Ultimately, her legacy is not only the survival of herself and her child, but the persistence of her narrative through centuries of attempted suppression. Her story embodies a timeless human truth, that even in the darkest, most precarious circumstances, agency, resilience, and courage can endure. By studying her life, we gain insight into the complexity of historical oppression, the extraordinary capacities of the human spirit, and the importance of recovering voices that history once sought to silence. Through meticulous reconstruction, historians have restored her presence, revealing a woman whose intelligence, bravery, and determination illuminate both the perils and possibilities of existence in an unforgiving world. Her life, now remembered, is a testament to the enduring power of resistance, the necessity of vigilance, and the remarkable courage required to assert one's existence against the forces of erasure. Every fragment of evidence recovered adds depth to our understanding, reminding us that the stories of the past are not merely curiosities, but vital connections to the ongoing struggles, triumphs, and humanity of those who came before. In remembering her, we confront the shadows of history, honor the resilience of those nearly forgotten, and recognize the profound impact of individual courage on collective memory. Her narrative, once nearly extinguished, now serves as both cautionary tale and inspiration, a vivid reminder that even when society seeks to silence life, and the stories of those who endure cannot be fully erased. Her story, once nearly lost to the shadows of history, now stands as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. The pregnant woman whose existence authorities tried to erase endured scrutiny, danger, and systemic oppression with a courage that resonates across centuries. Every choice she made, from her careful movements through crowded streets to her secret communications with allies, reflected a determination not merely to survive, but to assert her right to exist and protect the life she carried. In her resilience, we see a mirror of countless untold stories, of individuals whose voices were silenced, whose experiences were erased, yet whose courage shaped the fabric of their societies in quiet, unrecorded ways. By uncovering her life, historians have illuminated more than a single narrative. They have revealed the persistent struggles of those marginalized by societal norms, the cost of standing against oppression, and the extraordinary power of agency under constraint. Her legacy reminds us that history is not only shaped by the powerful, but also by those who endure in defiance of erasure, whose lives leave traces that, when discovered, inspire and educate generations far removed from their own time. Today, as we reflect on her journey, we are invited to consider the narratives we choose to preserve, the voices we honor, and the courage required to resist systems designed to suppress individuality and autonomy. Her story teaches us that survival, memory, and resistance are interconnected, and that the rediscovery of forgotten lives enriches our understanding of humanity itself. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, like the video, and tell us in the comments what type of stories you'd like to see. Which moment in her journey struck you the most? How do you think her courage resonates in today's world? Sharing your thoughts helps us continue to explore these hidden histories and honor the voices that history almost forgot. Your engagement ensures that stories like hers are not just remembered, but shared, celebrated, and allowed to inspire.